For 80 years, you have been told a comfortable lie. It is the story that fuels your movies and your conspiracy forums. The aliens are here. But a shadowy cabal of government elites is keeping the truth from you. You believe this story because it makes you feel innocent. It makes you a victim of the system. You tell yourself, if they would just tell us the truth, we would be ready. I am here to tell you that this is false. The government is not hiding the aliens from you. You are hiding the aliens from yourself. The reason extraterrestrial civilizations do not land on the lawn of the White House is not because of the prime directive or fear of our fighter jets. It is because they have analyzed our collective psychology and found a terrifying data point. Humanity does not want to know. We claim we seek the truth, but deep down, we are terrified of it. Because if they are real, then we are not the center of the universe. If they are real, our religions, our economies, and our tribal borders become instantly obsolete. Rather than face that ego death, we choose to look away. We choose to ridicule the witnesses. We choose to vote for leaders who promise us normality. The silence of the universe is not an accident. It is a collective choice. And tonight, through the eyes of a man who tried to hide from the world, you are going to learn how you are unconsciously voting for the cover-up every single day. Victor Hayes was a man who had made a career out of studying the mistakes of the past, only to realize that nobody ever learns from them. At 52, he was a retired professor of history, a man who had once filled lecture halls with passionate speeches about the cycles of civilization. But 3 years ago, Victor walked out of his classroom and never went back. He was burned out, tired of teaching the history of war to a generation eager to start the next one. He bought a cabin deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, disconnected the internet, and decided to let the world burn without him. Victor thought he had escaped. He thought that by hiding in the woods, he was opting out of the madness. He was wrong. On the night of October 4th, the madness came to his doorstep. It crashed. Victor was reading by his wood stove when a sonic boom shattered his front window. The ground shook violently. He ran to the porch just in time to see a streak of burning plasma tear through the canopy of the pines and slam into the ridge, 300 yards away. It wasn't a plane. Planes don't glow. Victor ran toward the crash site, driven by a morbid curiosity. When he arrived at the smoking crater, his cynicism vanished. The craft was shattered a jagged tear in a hole made of a metal that looked like frozen mercury. And crawling out of the wreckage was Zell. Zell was humanoid, fragile and bleeding, a violet fluid. He looked at Victor with a terrifying recognition. Then came the sound of the Blackhawks. Searchlights swept the forest floor. The military was coming to sanitize the scene. Victor had a choice. He could walk away and let the system handle it. But Victor hated the system. In an act of rebellion, he grabbed the injured being. He dragged Zell through the underbrush back to his cabin and shoved him into the hidden root cellar just as the troops rappelled down. For 3 days, Victor hid the alien while the military combed the woods. He treated Zell's wounds with cheap whiskey and bandages. In the silence of that basement, a conversation began that would shatter Victor's worldview. "You could have landed anywhere," Victor whispered one night. "You have technology that bends gravity. Why get shot down in the woods? Why not land at the UN? Why not end the debate once and for all?" Zell looked at the history books on Victor's shelf. "We do not land at your United Nations," Victor Zell replied, his mental voice soft and melancholic, "because you would shoot us there, too. And then you would erase the footage. You think you want contact, but you do not. Contact is a mirror. When we stand before you, we reflect everything you are not. And when a species sees a reflection it despises, it does not change its face. It breaks the mirror. We stay silent because of your denial. This story is not about government conspiracies. It is about the conspiracy of the human ego. Victor Hayes is about to learn that he is not innocent. He is about to learn that his cynicism and isolation are forms of the same denial that keeps the aliens away. If you are brave enough to look in the mirror, if you are ready to stop blaming the government and start asking what you are doing to keep the truth away, then subscribe. We are about to open the root cellar to truly understand why Victor Hayes was the perfect man to hear the aliens' message. You first have to understand the specific flavor of his despair. Victor was not a conspiracy theorist living in a tinfoil hat, posting blurry photos on internet forums. He was a scholar. For 28 years, he had been a distinguished professor of history at a prestigious Ivy League university. He was the man who wrote the definitive textbook on the collapse of the Bronze Age. He was the man who could trace the fall of Rome not to a single dramatic event, but to 1,000 tiny, daily decisions of denial made by its citizens. Victor's entire career was built on one obsession: the pattern. He studied how civilizations rise, how they become arrogant, how they ignore the cracks in their foundations, and how they inevitably collapse under the weight of their own delusions. He taught his students that history was not a straight line of progress. It was a cycle of amnesia. Societies forget what destroys them, and so they are doomed to repeat it. But 3 years ago, Victor stopped teaching. It wasn't because of a scandal. It wasn't because of his health. It was because of a specific Tuesday afternoon in a lecture hall filled with 200 undergraduates. He was in the middle of a passionate lecture about the parallels between the late Roman Republic and modern America, talking about the erosion of truth, the distraction of the masses, the worship of celebrity over substance. He was pouring his soul out, trying to warn them, trying to wake them up to the precipice they were standing on. He paused for breath, wiping sweat from his brow, looking out at the sea of faces, expecting to see a spark of recognition or fear. Instead, he saw the blue glow of 200 smartphones. They weren't looking at him. They were looking at their feeds. A hand went up in the front row. Victor nodded, hoping for a question about the nature of tyranny. The student asked, "Professor, will the fall of Rome be on the midterm, or just the rise? We need to know what to memorize." That was the moment Victor Hayes broke. He realized he was talking to a wall. He realized that these bright young minds didn't want to understand the world. They just wanted to pass the test. They wanted the comfortable, sanitized version of reality that would get them a degree and a job. They were practicing the very denial he was warning them about, ignoring the fire to focus on the game. Victor didn't answer the question. He walked out of the lecture hall, went to his office, packed his books into a cardboard box, and drove into the mountains. He told himself he was retiring to write his masterpiece. He told himself he was a conscientious objector to a society that had lost its mind. He bought the cabin in North Carolina, disconnected the internet, and built a fortress of books and solitude. He believed he was the only sane man left in a world of He blamed the education system. He blamed the media. He blamed the politicians. He constructed a narrative where he was the tragic hero, the Cassandra who saw the fire coming but was ignored by the Trojans. He wore his cynicism like a suit of armor, convinced that his isolation was a moral stance. But in the damp, moldy silence of the root cellar, with the alien Zell bleeding violet fluid onto a cot. That armor was stripped away. It happened on the second night. Victor was changing Zell's bandages, his hands steady, his mind racing with the implications of what lay on the cot. Here was the proof. Here was the anomaly that shattered every history book he had ever written. He looked at Zell, this fragile, grey-skinned being who had crossed the stars only to crash in a pine forest, and he felt a surge of vindication. They were wrong, Victor muttered, half to himself, dipping a rag into a bowl of warm water. The academics, the skeptics, the religious zealots, ... They were all wrong. I knew there was more. I knew the timeline didn't add up. He looked at Zell with a mix of pity and pride. I'm the only one who knows you're here, Victor said. I'm the only one brave enough to handle this. The rest of them ... They'd panic. They'd shoot you. I'm protecting you from their ignorance. Zell opened his large, dark eyes. The alien's gaze was unsettling. It didn't look grateful. It looked surgical. It looked like a doctor examining a tumor. You are not protecting me, Victor. Zell projected into the historian's mind. The voice was not a sound. It was a sudden realization, clear and cold. You are hiding me. And you are not hiding me because you are brave. You are hiding me because my existence proves that your isolation is a lie. Victor recoiled, dropping the rag. Excuse me? I saved your life. I dragged you out of that wreckage while the Blackhawk helicopters were circling overhead. I risked federal prison for you. I am the only reason you aren't on a dissection table at Wright-Patterson right now. You risked prison, Zell agreed, sitting up slowly, but you did not risk your worldview. You call yourself an exile, Victor. You tell yourself that you live in these woods because the world is too stupid, too blind, too corrupt for a man of your intelligence. You think you are above the denial of your species, but you are the embodiment of it. The alien's mental voice was devoid of malice, which made the words cut deeper. Isolation is not protection. It is imprisonment. You left your university not because the students were unteachable, but because you were afraid you could not teach them. You gave up. You looked at the difficulty of changing a mind, and you chose the comfort of silence. That is the ultimate denial. You denied your own agency. You chose to be a victim of the system rather than a participant in it. And now you hide me here in the dark, because as long as I am a secret, you can continue to feel superior to the sheep outside. If you revealed me, if you truly exposed the truth, you would have to go back out there. You would have to engage, and you are terrified of that. Victor stood up, his face flushing with anger. He paced the small dirt floor of the cellar, the smell of damp earth filling his nose. You don't know what it's like out there, he snapped. The academic world is a machine. It grinds you down. If I tried to talk about things like you, about advanced technology in the ancient world, about the gaps in the fossil record, ... They laughed at me. I tried, Zell. I tried to introduce alternative theories. I talked about the impossibility of the Great Pyramid's construction speeds. I talked about the sudden appearance of civilization in Sumer. And do you know what happened? My colleagues ridiculed me. They called it pseudo-history. They threatened my tenure. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the consensus. They wanted the safe, linear narrative where humans are the smartest things that ever happened, and we evolved in a straight line from mud to iPhone. I didn't run away. I was pushed. You were pushed, Zell conceded, and then you laid down. That is the difference. You see, Victor, your academia is indeed a machine of denial. We have watched your institutions for centuries. They are designed to filter out anomalies. When you find a skull that doesn't fit the timeline, you bury it in a basement. When you find a megalith you cannot explain with copper chisels, you invent a ritual purpose for it. You create a comfortable cage of known facts and you lock yourselves inside it. Why? Because the alternative is terrifying. If you admit that the pyramids were technology, you have to admit you are a post-apocalyptic civilization living in the ruins of giants. If you admit that I exist, you have to admit that your religions, your borders, and your wars are petty disputes in a kindergarten sandbox. Zell leaned forward, his eyes piercing through Victor's defenses. Your species loves the cage, Victor. You love the cage because you know where the walls are. You feel safe in the cage. And you, the great historian, you are just a man who painted the walls of his cage a different color and called it freedom. You blame the system for the silence, but the system is just the aggregate of billions of people like you people who choose comfort over truth, people who choose cynicism over action. You are not a rebel. You are a symptom. You hide in this cabin, drinking your whiskey, feeling superior to the people watching reality TV, but you are doing the exact same thing. You are distracting yourself from the responsibility of your own potential. The words hit Victor like a physical blow. He wanted to argue. He wanted to scream about his tenure, his books, his intellect, but he couldn't. Because deep down, in the place where he kept his darkest secrets, he knew the alien was right. He hadn't come to the mountains to find the truth. He had come to the mountains to sulk. He had come to nurse his wounded ego. He had spent 3 years drinking whiskey and reading books, telling himself he was a philosopher king in exile, when really he was just a bitter old man who had stopped fighting. He looked at Zell, this being who represented the shattering of every paradigm, and he realized that by keeping Zell hidden, he was doing exactly what the government did. He was containing the disruption. He was keeping the anomaly in the basement so that he didn't have to deal with the chaos of the revelation. So what am I supposed to do? Victor whispered, his voice losing its edge, sinking onto a crate of canned peaches. Am I supposed to march you up to the White House? They'd kill us both before we got to the highway. The denial isn't just in my head, Zell. It's in their guns. Perhaps, Zell said calmly, or perhaps that is another story you tell yourself to justify doing nothing. You assume the ending is tragic, so you never start the journey. That is the nature of human denial. You predict failure to excuse inaction. But we are not here to discuss your travel plans, Victor. We are here to discuss the question you asked me last night. You asked why my people do not land. You asked why we do not save you from your ignorance. Zell gestured to the dark, damp walls of the root cellar. Look around you. This room is a metaphor for your entire planet. You have hidden the truth in the dark. You have buried it, and you blame the truth for not shining. We do not land, Victor, because you have built a world that is designed to kill the messenger. We do not contact you because, collectively, you are screaming at us to stay away. You want the fantasy of aliens, not the reality. You want the movie, not the mirror. Victor sat there in the silence, the weight of the accusation settling on his shoulders. He realized then that the great silence of the universe wasn't empty space. It was a reflection of the silence inside his own heart. He was the denier, and until he could face that, he wasn't a hero saving an alien. He was just another jailer, holding the keys to a cell he had built for himself. The root cellar was cold, smelling of damp earth and the metallic temps of the violet blood that stained the bandages Victor had wrapped around Zell's chest. For 3 days, this 10 by 10 hole in the ground had become the center of the universe. Outside, the world continued its frantic pace. Victor could hear the distant rumble of convoys on the mountain roads, the shouts of soldiers combing the grid, the relentless search for the anomaly that had fallen from the sky. But inside, time seemed to warp. Victor Hayes, the man who had turned his back on history, was now sitting across from a being who had watched it all happen. Victor handed Zell a plate of food, simple human things. Bread and fruit which the alien examined with the curiosity of a biologist looking at a petri dish. "Why us?" Victor asked, breaking the heavy silence. "You said you watch us. You said we are a case study. What is so special about a violent, confused species of primates on the edge of the galaxy? Why bother crashing here?" Zell took a piece of apple, his long grey fingers turning it over. "You are not special in the way you think, Victor," Zell replied, his mental voice devoid of the ego-stroking flattery humans crave. "You are not the center of creation. But you are ... dense. Your planet is a focal point of extreme polarity. You are capable of profound love and devastating cruelty in the same breath. To the Council of Observers, Earth is a rare laboratory. We watch you to understand how consciousness navigates the dark. You are one of 12 civilizations currently under direct observation in this sector, and one of hundreds being monitored indirectly. We do not interfere. We document. We record the rise and fall of your empires, just as you record the life cycles of bacteria." Victor bristled at the comparison. "Bacteria? Is that all we are to you? Lab rats?" "Lab rats do not build nuclear weapons," Zell countered. "Lab rats do not create symphonies. You are dangerous, Victor. You are powerful. But you are like children playing with loaded guns in a dark room. We watch because we are waiting to see if you will turn on the light or if you will shoot yourselves. I am an observer. My mission was to catalogue the shift in your atmospheric carbon levels and the increasing instability of your geopolitical grid. My crash was an error, a miscalculation of your atmospheric turbulence. I broke the protocol of invisibility." Victor looked at the alien, his historian's mind racing. He thought about the anomalies he had studied for 30 years, the impossible masonry of Peru, the sudden mathematical brilliance of Sumer, the myths of sky gods descending in chariots of fire. "You've been here before," Victor whispered, the realization dawning on him. "This isn't the first time. The history books. The gaps. You were there." Zell nodded slowly. "We have always been here. We walked with you in the garden when you were young. We gave you tools. We gave you maps." Zell projected an image into Victor's minder, crisp, holographic memory of the Giza Plateau thousands of years ago. But it wasn't the dusty ruin Victor knew. The pyramids were encased in blinding white limestone, capped with gold, humming with a low-frequency vibration that seemed to stabilize the tectonic plates beneath them. The Great Pyramid, Zell explained, was not a tomb for a dead king. It was a stabilizer. It was a power plant of consciousness. It was a gift of technology meant to help your species align with the planetary grid. We gave you the instruction manual, and what did we do with it? Victor asked, though he already knew the answer. You forgot, Zell said simply. You lost the manual. You turned the machine into a grave. You worshipped the messenger and burned the message. This is the pattern of your species, Victor. You take technology and turn it into religion. You take truth and turn it into mythology. And then you deny that the truth ever existed. You convince yourselves that you've built the mountains with copper chisels, because the alternative that you are a fallen species living in the ruins of a greater past is too painful to accept. Victor stood up and paced the small room. The confirmation was intoxicating, but it was also infuriating. Here was the answer to every question he had ever asked. Here was the missing link. And it was sitting in his basement while the world outside remained ignorant. The injustice of it burned him. This is why you have to reveal yourself, Victor said, stopping in front of Zell. You can't just watch us fail again. You can't just document our extinction. If you have the answers, if you have the technology, you have a moral obligation to intervene. Why don't you land? Why don't you make open contact? If you showed the world what you just showed, Mether, pyramids, the history, the truth, we would have to change. We wouldn't have a choice. Zell looked at Victor with a gaze that held a terrible, ancient sadness. You asked the core question, the alien said. Why do we not save you? Why do we stay in the shadows? You think it is a law? You think it is the prime directive from your science fiction shows? No, there is no law preventing contact. We could land tomorrow. We could override your broadcast signals. We could park a fleet over every major city and force you to look up. Then do it, Victor shouted. Do it and save us. We do not do it, Zell said, his mental voice dropping to a whisper that vibrated in Victor's bones, because you do not want us to. Victor laughed, a harsh, barking sound. That's ridiculous. Look at the movies. Look at the books. Humanity is obsessed with aliens. We are searching the sky with radio telescopes. We are desperate for contact. You are desperate for entertainment, Zell corrected. You are desperate for distraction. You want aliens to be a story. You want us to be monsters you can fight, or saviors who will fix your climate and pay your debts. But you do not want the reality of us. Zell leaned forward, the violet light in his eyes intensifying. Open contact is not just a handshake, Victor. It is a paradigm shift. It is the end of your world as you know it. If we land, your stock markets crash to zero overnight, because who cares about gold when we can replicate matter? Your religions collapse because how can you be the chosen children of God if there are billions of others older and wiser than you? Your borders vanish because, from space, lines on a map are invisible. Your entire identity, your ego, your pride, your sense of control is obliterated. We have run the simulations, Victor. We have simulated open contact with Earth 1,000,000 times. And in 99% of those simulations, the result is not peace. It is mass suicide. It is global war. It is total psychological collapse. You claim you want the truth, but your species is addicted to the cage. You rely on the lies to function. You need the borders. You need the economy. You need the specialness. That's a simulation, Victor argued, shaking his head. You don't know for sure. People are resilient. We adapt. We do not rely only on simulations, Zell said. We rely on history. We have tried, Victor. We have attempted contact before, and every time we get close, you scream no. Victor frowned. What do you mean? When have you tried? Roswell, 1947, Zell cited. It was not a weather balloon. It was a survey craft, much like mine, that malfunctioned. It crashed. The military found the bodies. They found the metal. And for exactly 24 hours, the headline on your newspapers read, RAAF captures flying saucer. The truth was out. It was printed. It was in your hands. And what happened? Zell asked. Did the public demand answers? Did they storm the fences? No. The next day, the government released a ludicrous story about a weather balloon. A child could have seen through it. But the public sighed with relief. They accepted the lie immediately. They drank it down like warm milk. Why? Because the idea of a weather balloon was safe. The idea of a flying saucer meant the world had changed. You chose the balloon, Victor. You chose the lie because the truth was too big to hold. Washington, D.C., 1952, Zell continued, relentless. We flew a formation of discs over your Capitol building. We were visible on radar. We were visible to the naked eye. Thousands saw us. We buzzed the White House. We were inviting a dialogue. We were saying, we are here, look up. And what did you do? You scrambled jets to shoot us down. And the next week, when the Air Force said it was temperature inversions and swamp gas, you nodded and went back to work. You erased the event from your collective memory. You scrubbed it from your history books. Zell paused, letting the weight of the examples sink in. These were not successful government cover-ups, Victor. They were successful civilizational denials. A government cannot hide the sun unless the people agree to close their eyes. You closed your eyes. You are still closing them. So do not ask me why we do not contact you, Zell finished, his voice echoing with finality. We are standing right in front of you. We are buzzing your towers. We are crashing in your woods. And you are looking at us and seeing weather balloons. You are looking at us and seeing swamp gas. We do not hide, Victor. You ignore. Victor sat frozen on the crate. He thought about the Roswell headline. He thought about the history books he had written. Books that conveniently skipped over 1952. He realized with a sickening lurch that Zell was right. The cover-up wasn't something done to humanity. It was something done by humanity. It was a collective immune response. The human mind rejected the alien reality just as a body rejects a transplanted organ. It's fear, Victor whispered. We're just afraid. It is more than fear, Zell said. It is complicity. And until you understand how you participate in that complicity, Victor, until you understand how you vote for the silence every single day, the sky will remain empty. You are not waiting for us. We are waiting for you to stop blinking. Victor sat on the crate, the damp cold of the root cellar seeping into his bones, but he barely felt it. His mind was reeling from Zell's accusation. Complicity. It was a word he used in his history lectures to describe the citizens who watched the trains go by in 1940s Europe and did nothing. To have it turned against him, against humanity, felt like an insult. You can't blame the average person, Victor argued, his voice raspy. They are busy surviving. They have bills to pay, children to feed. They rely on the government to tell them what is real. If the president went on TV tomorrow and said, "My fellow Americans, we are not alone," they would believe him. They are waiting for permission to believe. Zell watched Victor with that unblinking, violet-tinged gaze. And that is exactly why the president will never say it, Zell projected. Because he knows you better than you know yourselves. He knows that you are not waiting for permission to believe. You are waiting for permission to sleep. The alien stood up and began to pace the small room, his movement fluid despite his injuries. Let us dissect this, Victor. Let us look at the anatomy of your denial. It is not a singular decision. It is a complex immune system designed to protect your ego. The first layer of defense is the challenge to centrality. Zell stopped and pointed a long grey finger at Victor. Your entire psychological stability rests on the assumption that you are the main character of the universe. Your religions teach you that you were created in the image of the Creator. Your science, for centuries, put your planet at the center of the solar system. Even now, your secular humanism teaches that human consciousness is the pinnacle of evolution. You feel special. You feel unique. You feel that the galaxy was made for you. Now, Zell continued, imagine open contact. Imagine a fleet of ships, descending ships, piloted by beings who are 1,000,000 years older than you. Beings who mapped the stars while your ancestors were still banging rocks together. In a single second, your status collapses. You are no longer the children of God. You are the uncontacted tribe in the Amazon. You are the toddler in a room full of adults. Your art, your philosophy, your achievements, suddenly they look like finger paintings on a fridge. Do you understand the psychological violence of that moment? It is ego death on a planetary scale, and the human ego will do anything to avoid its own death. It will deny. It will attack. It will retreat into fantasy. You ignore us not because we are invisible, but because seeing us makes you feel small. Victor shook his head. We can handle being small. We discovered the size of the universe, and we didn't go insane. We know we're specks of dust. You know it intellectually, Zell corrected. You do not know it viscerally. There is a difference between knowing the ocean is deep and drowning in it. But the denial is not just about pride, Victor. It is about work. This is the second layer, the terror of change. The alien leaned in closer. If you admit I am real, Victor, you cannot go back to your job on Monday morning and care about the faculty meeting. If the public admits we are real, the stock market becomes a fiction. Why trade futures on oil when zero-point energy makes oil obsolete? Why fight over a border when you realize you are one species on a tiny rock? The truth is not just a fact you add to your encyclopedia. The truth is a wrecking ball. It demands that you change everything, your economy, your energy, your worship, your daily priorities. And here is the secret of your species, Zell whispered in Victor's mind. You are lazy. You prefer a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. You choose the 9-to-5 grind, the debt, the wars, and the pollution because they are known. They are predictable. Contact brings the unknown, and the human animal hates the known more than it hates suffering. So, when a witness sees a light in the sky, their brain scrambles to find a mundane explanation. It was a drone. It was a flare. They are not stupid, Victor. They are efficiently protecting their routine. They are choosing the blue pill because the red pill requires them to wake up and clean the mess they have made. Victor stared at the dirt floor. He thought about his own retreat to the cabin. Was it really a moral stand? Or was it just easier to hide in the woods than to stay in the university and fight for a better curriculum? He realized Zell was describing him. He had chosen the known misery of isolation over the unknown work of engagement. But we aren't all like that, Victor insisted weakly. There are people who speak out, whistleblowers, pilots, people who risk their careers to tell the truth. And what do you do to them? Zell asked. This is the third layer of the denial. The social immune response. When a cell in your body acts differently, your immune system attacks it. When a human speaks a truth that threatens the collective sleep, your society attacks him. You call them crazy. You call them conspiracy theorists. You ridiculed them on your late-night comedy shows. You stripped them of their credentials. You think this suppression comes from the government? Zell asked, projecting an image of a 1950s news anchor laughing at a UFO report. No, it comes from your neighbors. It comes from your family at the dinner table. If you told your colleagues at the university that you saw a spaceship, Victor, who would be the first to laugh? The CIA? No. Your best friend would laugh first. Your wife would look at you with pity. Your society punishes the truth-teller because he is waking you up from a pleasant dream. You protect the dream by destroying the alarm clock. The government does not need to silence you. The social pressure of your peers does the work for them efficiently and for free. Victor stood up and walked to the small window of the cellar, looking out at the darkness. You make us sound like sheep, he said bitterly, like we have no agency. But we have institutions. We have leaders. Surely they know. Surely they are the ones keeping the lid on. Zell let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. Ah, the institutions, Zell said. The government, the church, the media, you blame them for the darkness. You imagine a smoky room of old men deciding your fate. This is the most comfortable lie of all. It allows you to point the finger. The alien stood up and walked to the center of the room. Let us look at your institutions, Victor. But let us look at them not as your masters, but as your employees. Let us start with your government. You say they cover up the truth. I say they are simply giving you what you voted for. You do not vote for disclosure. You vote for stability. You vote for the candidate who promises lower gas prices, safe streets, and a growing 401k. You vote for the maintenance of the status quo. Now, Zell continued, imagine a president walks out tomorrow and says, "The aliens are here. They have technology that makes our oil worthless. Their presence means our borders are meaningless. And by the way, they have been watching us commit crimes for centuries." What happens, Victor? The stock market crashes to zero in 5 minutes. Panic in the streets. Looting, the collapse of the dollar. And in the next election, who do you vote for? Do you vote for the man who told you the truth and ruined your retirement fund? Or do you vote for the man who says, "That guy was crazy. Vote for me and I will bring back the economy"? Victor was silent. He knew history. He knew that populations always punish the bearer of bad news. The government knows this, Zell explained. They are terrified of you. They are terrified of your panic. So they act as the ultimate noise-cancelling headphone. They filter out the reality that would upset the market. They hide the bodies and the crash debris not to oppress you, but to keep the illusion of stability running, because that is what you hired them to do. You hired them to keep the lights on and the monsters away. If they told you the monsters were in the living room, you would fire them. The cover-up is not a tyranny, Victor. It is a service. It is a public utility, like garbage collection. You pay them to take the weird things away so you don't have to look at them, and your religions. Zell asked, moving to the next pillar. They are no different. People go to church to feel safe. They go to be told that there is a plan, that they are loved, that death is not the end. They seek simple answers to complex questions. If the Pope announced that humans are a genetic experiment seeded by a level 2 civilization 300,000 years ago, the pews would empty. The comfort would be gone. The church hides the complexity of the cosmos because the flock demands simplicity. They are selling a product, Victor, and the product is certainty. Aliens destroy certainty. Finally, look at your media, Zell said, gesturing to the stack of old newspapers Victor used to kindle the fire. You blame the media for not investigating, but the media is a mirror of your attention. They operate on clicks and views. If they publish a serious, dry analysis of UAP radar data, nobody reads it. But if they publish a story about a celebrity scandal, or a political outrage, or a cat video, you click, you watch, you share. The media ignores us because you ignore us, Zell stated bluntly. If the human population truly demanded the truth, if you stopped clicking on the distraction and started demanding the data, the media would shift in a day. But you don't. You use the media to numb yourselves. You use it to confirm your biases. The news anchor laughs at the UFO story because he knows that laughter makes the audience feel superior and safe. He is not a censor. He is an entertainer, and he is playing the song you requested. Victor sank back onto the crate. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. The comfortable narrative of the evil government was dissolving, replaced by something much heavier. He realized that the silence of the universe wasn't being imposed from above. It was being generated from below. It was a frequency emitted by 8 billion people who wanted to wake up tomorrow and have everything be exactly the same as it was today. So it's a conspiracy of comfort, Victor whispered. It is a consensus reality, Zell corrected. You are all holding hands and agreeing to pretend the elephant is not in the room. Because if you acknowledge the elephant, you have to rebuild the house. And you are too tired to rebuild the house. The alien looked at Victor with a gaze that stripped away the last of his defenses. This is why I am in your cellar, Victor. Not because the military is efficient, but because if you walked into town right now and showed me to the world would hate you for it. They would not call you a hero. They would call you the man who broke the dream. And you are not ready to be that man. You are still voting for the denial, just like everyone else. Victor stared into the embers of the small fire he had built in the cellar's ventilation shaft. The warmth didn't reach him. He felt stripped naked. For decades, he had built his identity around the idea that he was a victim of a corrupt world, brilliant mind silenced by a foolish system. Now, Zell was telling him that the system was just a reflection of his own desire for comfort. He wasn't a victim. He was an architect. So it's hopeless, Victor muttered, picking at a loose thread on his flannel shirt. If 8 billion people are unconsciously agreeing to keep the door shut, if we are all holding hands and chanting, make it go away, then one man can't change anything. I might as well keep you hidden. The momentum of the lie is too strong. Zell sat up on the cot, the violet light in his eyes pulsing with a sudden, sharp intensity. You are making the mistake of the historian, Victor, the alien projected. You look at the macro, the empires, the errors, the billions. But the macro is made of the micro. The ocean is made of drops. You think the denial is a solid wall. It is not. It is a vote. The alien stood and walked to the center of the room, his movements casting long, strange shadows against the dirt walls. Let us talk about the daily vote. You think you vote once every 4 years for a president. This is an illusion. You vote every single second of every single day. You vote with your attention. You vote with your money. You vote with your conversation. Every morning, Zell continued, you wake up and you are presented with a choice. You can engage with the mystery of existence, or you can engage with the distraction. When you choose to scroll through social media for an hour instead of looking at the stars, you are voting for the shield. When you choose to laugh at a colleague who brings up a strange light he saw, instead of asking him questions, you are voting for the shield. When you turn on the news and see a report about war, and you switch the channel because it makes you uncomfortable, you are voting for the shield. Victor frowned. That's just human nature. We can't be profound all the time. We need breaks. It is not about breaks, Zell countered. It is about policing reality. You police each other, Victor. You are the guards of the prison. Think back to your time at the university. Think back to the faculty lounge. Victor closed his eyes. He could smell the stale coffee and the dry erase markers. Imagine a young professor comes in. Zell whispered in his mind. He is excited. He has found a correlation between ancient megalithic sites and magnetic anomalies. He suggests that perhaps the ancients had a technology we do not understand. What happens in that room, Victor? Victor didn't need to imagine. He remembered. We laugh, he admitted quietly. We make a joke about ancient aliens. We roll our eyes. We ask him if he's been watching too much History Channel. The scoff, Zell said, identifying the weapon. The scoff is the most powerful weapon in your arsenal. It is more effective than a censorship law. In 1 second, you signaled to that young man, if you continue down this path, you will lose your status. You will be exiled from the tribe. And what did he do? He stopped talking about it, Victor whispered. He went back to writing papers about pottery shards. You cast a vote, Zell said. You voted to maintain the consensus. You voted to keep the timeline linear and safe. You did not do it because you were evil. You did it because the anomaly threatened the stability of your department. You prioritized your social standing over the pursuit of truth. That is the mechanism, Victor. It happens in every office, every dinner party, every classroom. Billions of tiny acts of social shaming that keep the herd moving in the same direction away from the cliff edge of the unknown. The denial is not a top-down order from the CIA, Zell declared. It is a bottom-up, peer pressure campaign. You are all terrified of looking crazy to each other, so you pretend not to see the dragon in the room, and eventually the pretense becomes reality. You forget the dragon is even there. Victor felt a wave of nausea. He realized he had been an enforcer. He had used his intellect not to open minds, but to patrol the borders of what was acceptable to think. He had sacrificed the truth to protect his tenure. I did it, Victor confessed, his voice breaking. I silenced them. I thought I was teaching them rigor, but I was just teaching them fear. And this brings us to the trap of complicity, Zell said, his tone softening, moving from accusation to explanation. You feel guilty now. But guilt is useless to me. Guilt is just another form of self-obsession. You must understand the structure of the trap so you can dismantle it. The trap is that you believe the cover-up is a malevolent conspiracy of the few against the many. This belief makes you feel powerless. It makes you feel like a victim. Oh, poor us. The government won't tell us the truth. As long as you believe this, you do not have to do anything. You can sit on your couch and wait for disclosure. You can wait for Daddy to tell you it's okay to go outside. But if you accept the truth, Zell paused, leaning in until his face was inches from Victor's. If you accept that you are the cover-up, that you are the one keeping the secret, then the dynamic changes instantly. The victimhood vanishes. Victor looked up, confused. How does that help? If it's our fault, that's even worse. It means we're the villains. No, Zell corrected firmly. It means you are the masters. The word hung in the damp air of the cellar. Do you not see the liberation in this logic? Zell asked, his mental voice rising in power. If the government is the master and you are the slave, you are helpless. You must beg for crumbs of truth. But if the government is the employee and you are the master, if they are only hiding us because you demanded it, then you have the power to change the order. This is not about blame, Victor. Blame is heavy. Blame looks backward. This is about responsibility. Responsibility is light. Responsibility looks forward. To be responsible means you have the ability to respond. It means the keys to the cell are in your pocket. They have been in your pocket for 80 years. Victor stood up slowly. The crushing weight of guilt began to shift, replaced by something sharper, more frightening, but also more energizing. Agency. If we are doing this to ourselves, Victor said, working through the logic, then we can stop doing it. Exactly, Zell said. The government cannot stop you. The media cannot stop you. They are reactive. They follow the algorithm of the masses. If the masses change the algorithm, the institutions must follow. If enough of your critical mass decide tomorrow that you are no longer afraid, if you decide that you want the truth more than you want comfort, the cover-up evaporates. It cannot exist without your consent. The silence of the universe ends the moment you stop screaming at us to go away, Zell said. We are waiting for the signal, but the signal must be coherent. It cannot be save us. It must be we are ready to meet you as equals. Victor walked to the stack of canned peaches and picked one up, turning it over in his hands. He thought about his life in the cabin. He thought about his silence. He realized that by hiding Zell, he was voting for fear. He was voting for the idea that humanity couldn't handle the truth. He was protecting the very ignorance he claimed to hate. I've been voting for the silence, Victor whispered, by hiding you here, by hiding myself here. You have, Zell agreed. You have been a faithful citizen of the denial. But the polls are open every day, Victor. You can change your vote. You can choose to be uncomfortable, Zell challenged. You can choose to be ridiculed. You can choose to be the one who does not scoff. You can choose to look in the mirror and say, I am ready to see what I really am. That is the vote that counts. And you do not need a majority to start the change. You only need a seed. Victor looked at the alien. For 3 days, he had seen Zell as a burden, a secret, a dangerous object to be hidden. Now, he saw him as an opportunity. Zell wasn't just a refugee. He was a catalyst. I have to let you go, Victor realized. Not just let you go. I have to stop hiding you. But if I walk you out the front door, the soldiers will shoot. There is a third option, Zell said, a faint glimmer of a smile appearing in his mind. My people know I am here. They are tracking my signal, but they will not retrieve me as long as I am underground. They respect the quarantine you have created. They are waiting for the all clear. They are waiting for someone on the ground to acknowledge the reality. If you take me to the ridge, if you stand with me in the open, if you witness my departure without fear, that is a signal. It is a small vote, but it is a vote for contact. Victor looked at the stairs leading up to the cabin, leading up to the world, leading up to the Blackhawks and the noise and the judgment. He felt the old fear rising, the fear of being seen, the fear of being labeled a lunatic. But then he remembered the lecture hall. He remembered the students' faces, blue-lit and vacant. He remembered his own cowardice. He realized he couldn't go back to writing history books about dead empires. He had a chance to make history. "Okay," Victor said, his voice steady for the first time in years. "Let's go upstairs. Let's change the vote." Victor helped Zell up the wooden stairs of the root cellar. The alien's weight surprisingly light, like a bird made of hollow bones. Every step was a protest against Victor's old instincts. His brain screamed at him that this was suicide, that he was walking a fugitive out into a kill zone. But his heart, a muscle he hadn't trusted in years, beat with a new, fierce rhythm. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was emerging. They stepped out into the main room of the cabin. It looked different to Victor now. For 3 years, he had seen this room as his sanctuary, his fortress against a mad world. Now, seeing it through the eyes of the truth he carried, it looked like what it really was, a bunker. The stacks of books were walls. The drawn curtains were black. He had buried himself here not to find wisdom, but to avoid the friction of living. "We have to move," Victor said, grabbing his coat. "The ridge is 300 yards up. It's the only clear signal point." They moved into the night. The air was cold and smelled of pine resin and impending rain. The forest was alive with the chaotic noise of the search party's shouts echoing from the valley floor. Beams of light cutting through the trees like laser grids. But strangely, as Victor and Zell climbed the deer trail toward the ridge, the chaos seemed to bend around them. The searchlights missed them by inches. The soldiers turned left when they should have turned right. "They cannot see us," Zell projected, sensing Victor's confusion. "Because they are looking for a monster. They are looking for a threat. We are vibrating at the frequency of resolution. We are invisible to their fear." They reached the granite outcrop at the top of the ridge. The wind whipped Victor's hair across his face. Below them, the valley was a sea of darkness, punctuated by the frantic activity of the military cordon. Above them, the Milky Way stretched out in a silent, indifferent arc of diamonds. Victor stood there, panting, looking at the stars. "I spent my whole life studying the past," he told Zell. "I thought the answers were in the ruins. I thought if I could just understand why Rome fell, I could save America. But I was looking in the rearview mirror while the car was going off the cliff." Zell stood at the edge of the precipice, his silhouette framed against the galaxy. "You were looking for patterns of failure," the alien said. "And you found them. But you forgot to look for the patterns of breakthrough. Rome fell, yes. But humanity survived. You are resilient, Victor. Your species is not doomed. You are just ... stuck. You are in the rebellious teenager phase of your evolution. You think you know everything, so you stop listening to the teachers. How do we grow up?" Victor asked. "If the denial is so strong, if the inertia is so heavy, how does it ever change?" Zell turned to him. "Critical mass," the entity said. "This is the physics of social change. You do not need to convince 8 billion people. You do not need 51% of the vote. You only need the square root of 1% of the population to fully, truly awaken. When a small group of minds aligns with a higher truth, it creates a resonance field. It becomes a tuning fork that forces the rest of the orchestra to get in tune. We track this resonance, Zell revealed. We have meters that measure the collective consciousness of Earth. For centuries, the needle was stuck in the red zone survival war, fear. But in the last 50 years, it has started to twitch. It is moving toward the green. You are closer than you think, Victor. The chaos you see in your world right now, the political madness, the anxiety, that is not the end. That is the fever breaking. That is the immune system fighting the old virus of separation. Victor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He realized that his despair had been premature. He had mistaken the labor pains for the death rattle. So what is my job? Victor asked. I'm just a retired teacher. I can't stop the military. I can't change the government. You do not fight the darkness, Zell said, echoing the lesson of the cellar. You light a candle. Your job, Victor, is to go back. You must leave this cabin. You must go back to the lecture hall. But this time, do not teach them the history of war. Teach them the history of possibility. Teach them about the anomalies. Ask the dangerous questions. Plant the seed. You will be ridiculed, Zell warned. They will roll their eyes. But in that room of 200 students, there will be one student who is waiting for permission to think differently. One student who feels the wrongness of the world and needs a mentor to validate it. If you save that one mind, you start the chain reaction. That is how the critical mass is built. One candle lighting another, a low harmonic hum began to vibrate the granite beneath their feet. The air pressure dropped. The hairs on Victor's arms stood up. They are here, Zell said. Victor looked up. The stars were being blotted out, a shape vast, triangular, and darker than the night sky descended silently over the ridge. It was massive, easily the size of a football stadium, yet it made no sound. No wind, no roar, just a pure, silent manipulation of gravity. The searchlights from the valley floor suddenly swung up, catching the underside of the craft. For a second, the entire military operation froze. Victor imagined the soldiers down there, looking up, their worldviews cracking in real time. They were seeing the impossible. A beam of pale violet light descended from the craft, enveloping Zell. I leave you now, Zell projected, his voice sounding distant, as if he were already halfway to the stars. But I do not leave you alone. We are always watching. We are always waiting. When will you come back? Victor shouted over the rising hum. When will you land for real? Zell paused, floating a few inches off the ground. We will land, the alien promised, on the day you stop looking for a savior and start looking for a brother. We will land when you no longer need us to save you from yourselves. Do not wait for us, Victor. We are waiting for you. With a flash that was felt rather than seen, Zell shot upward into the belly of the craft. The violet beam vanished. The massive ship rotated once, defying all laws of inertia, and then accelerated straight up. In the blink of an eye, it was gone, leaving a streak of ionized air that punched a hole through the clouds. Victor stood alone on the ridge. The silence returned, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the cellar. It was an electric silence. The military helicopters were swarming now, confused, angry, searching for a target that had vanished. But Victor didn't care. He stood there, laughing softly. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't alone. And for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't hopeless. He walked back down the trail to the cabin. He entered the main room and looked around at his bunker. It looked small. It looked petty. He walked to the corner and picked up the landline, phoned the dusty, rotary phone he had kept only for emergencies. He dialed a number he hadn't called in 3 years. It rang 4 times. Hello. A woman's voice. Sharp, guarded. Who is this? Sarah, Victor said, his voice rusty but firm. It's Dad. Silence on the other end. Then a hesitant exhale. Dad, is everything okay? You haven't called since you left. I know, Victor said. I was wrong, Sarah. I thought I was leaving because the world was broken. But I was leaving because I was broken. I blamed you. I blamed everyone for being part of the machine. But I was just hiding. Why are you calling now? It's 3 a.m. Because I saw something, Victor said, looking out the window at the patch of sky where the ship had been. And it reminded me that history isn't over. I'm coming back, Sarah. I'm going to list the cabin. I'm coming back to the city. To do what? She asked, skepticism warring with hope in her voice. To yell at the TV again. No, Victor smiled. To teach. I have a new syllabus, and ... I want to see my grandson. I want to tell him a story about the stars. He hung up the phone. He went to his desk and opened his laptop, blowing the dust off the keys. He opened a blank document. For years, he had planned to write a book called The Decline of the American Mind. He highlighted the title and pressed delete. He typed a new title, The Mirror in the Sky, Why We Are Not Alone, and Why We Are Afraid. He looked at the cursor blinking. It was a small thing, a tiny pulse of light in the darkness. But it was a start. He was casting his vote. He was planting the seed. Victor Hayes was no longer a hermit. He was a participant, and somewhere above the clouds, he knew the observers were noting the shift. The needle on the cosmic meter had moved just a fraction of an inch toward the green. The story of Victor Hayes is not just a fable about a man in the woods. It is a biography of the human species. For the last 20 minutes, you have listened to a story about aliens, government cover-ups, and secret histories. But if you have been paying attention, you know that we haven't been talking about them at all. We have been talking about you. The alien Zell gave us the final piece of the puzzle. He told us that contact is a mirror. When we look up at the night sky and see nothing but silence, we assume the universe is empty or that the aliens are hiding. But the silence is not empty. It is a reflection. It is reflecting our own closed eyes back at us. The universe is teeming with life, noisy with commerce and philosophy and travel. We are the ones wearing the noise-cancelling headphones. We are the ones who have pulled the curtains tight and hung a Do Not Disturb sign on the door of our planet. Why? Because the mirror is terrifying. If we acknowledge the reality of Zell, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at our wars and admit they are childish tantrums. We have to look at our poverty and admit it is a choice of greed, not a necessity of scarcity. We have to look at our religions and admit they are maps of a small island, not the whole world. The mirror shows us exactly who we are, a brilliant, broken, adolescent species that is terrified of growing up, and so we hire the government to break the mirror for us. This is the most important truth you will take away from this video. The government is not your oppressor. It is your janitor. We complain about the secrecy. We complain about the lies. But secretly, subconsciously, we are relieved. When the Air Force says it was just a weather balloon, a part of us sighs and says, Thank God, I don't have to change my worldview today. I don't have to rewrite my physics textbooks. I can go back to worrying about my mortgage. We have outsourced the management of our existential dread to the state. We pay taxes so that men in black suits will keep the monsters away and keep the reality simple. We are not victims of a conspiracy. We are the employers of it. But here is the good news. Here is the liberating fire that Victor found on that ridge. If we are the employers, we can change the job description. The moment we stop needing the lie will crumble. The moment the population reaches a critical mass of curiosity that outweighs the fear, the government will have no choice but to disclose. They cannot hide the truth from a people who are no longer afraid of it. So, how do we get there? How do we build that critical mass? It starts with personal responsibility. You cannot wait for the New York Times to tell you the truth. You cannot wait for the president to hold a press conference. You have to become the disclosure. You have to do what Victor did. You have to come out of the cabin. Every time you choose to ridicule a strange idea because you are afraid of looking foolish, you are voting for the silence. Stop doing that. Every time you choose to ignore the anomalies of history because they don't fit the timeline, you are voting for the amnesia. Stop doing that. Every time you let cynicism convince you that nothing will ever change, you are voting for the cage. Stop doing that. You must become a safe harbor for the truth. You must be the person in your family, in your office, in your friend group, who is not afraid to ask the question, what if we are wrong about everything? When you do this, when you stop scoffing and start listening, you send a signal. It is a subtle signal, but the observers are watching for it. They are measuring the resonance of our planet. They are waiting for the needle to move from fear to ready. Victor Hayes went back to the university. He didn't burn it down. He infiltrated it. He started teaching a new history of possibility. He planted seeds in the minds of the next generation. He didn't need to save the whole world. He just needed to save his corner of it. You have a corner, too. You have a sphere of influence. You have a vote. The alien promised Victor, we will land on the day you stop looking for a savior and start looking for a brother. This is the test. They are not coming to save us from our climate crisis, or our wars, or our debt. If they did that, we would learn nothing. We would just trade one master for another. They are waiting for us to clean up our own room, to stand up straight, and to look them in the eye as equals. They are waiting for us to grow up so. Tonight, I want you to do something dangerous. I want you to go outside. I want you to look up at the stars. And I want you to drop the cynicism. Drop the fear. Drop the X-Files music playing in your head. Look at the empty space between the stars and realize it is not empty. It is full of family waiting for you to pick up the phone. Say it out loud. Say it to the sky. I am ready to know. I am not afraid of the mirror. And then bring that courage back down to earth. If this story shifted something in you, if you felt the truth of the mirror, then you are part of the critical mass. You are the square root of 1% that Zell talked about. Do not let this realization fade. Do not let the algorithm pull you back into the distraction of cat videos and political rage. You have a responsibility now. We need to signal the algorithm. We need to signal the collective consciousness. Go to the comments below and declare your vote. Type, I am ready for the truth. Let the world see the numbers. Let the skeptics see that we are not afraid. Let the observers see that the needle is moving. Share this video. not to convince the trolls, but to find the others, to find the people who are hiding in their own cabins, thinking they are alone. Tell them the war is over. Tell them it's time to come out. I am the narrator. The mirror is unbroken. The signal is sent. See you in the future.